So hello everybody. Thank you for being here today in our live talk in the anxiety series about general anxiety disorders. Happy to have you here. We're still waiting for our Indian colleagues. Maybe they're a bit late. We will see. Yes, Neil and Veronica, thank you so much for being here. And maybe at the beginning of the series, introduce yourself a bit and tell us a bit on how you're working on anxiety, and then we try to go in the middle of general anxiety.
Who shall start?
Veronica, start.
Okay. Yeah, good morning, everybody. I'm very pleased to be able to attend today here from Tobago. It is now 5 o'clock. I live in Tobago since 17 years. I'm born in South Germany. And yeah, I moved here when I was 30 years old. And I love animals. I love art. I love nature. And with that passion, I created Healing and Being with Horses. Healing with Horses is a charity foundation where, for example, we also had during lockdown, we had frontline workers here with anxiety, just being out in nature with these beautiful animals. And it's always so rejuvenating. Just being out there with the animals in nature. So basically, that's what we offered. And we are still having adults and adolescents here who would sign up because they, for example, have big anxiety attacks. Yes. And our work makes a difference in their life. We have a lot of progress reports. I'm very proud of that.
Thank you.
That sounds wonderful. Wonderful, Veronica. It's fabulous to hear your approach, and it's so good to be able to have all of that feedback that you're talking about, the progress reports and so on. That's really great achievement, and take my hat off to you. That's really good news. Yeah. So I'm Neil Dugan. I'm originally from New Zealand, and I live east of Perth in West Australia now. And I don't have such a wide range of animals as you have, Veronica, but we have dogs and chickens and quail and that kind of stuff on the property. And I grow a lot of gardens and those types of things, which are incredibly important in terms of, the management of the sorts of stress that would lead to an anxiety disorder. So I completely resonate with your approach, the way that all of those things work. What's interesting to me in terms of what I observe around animals is that animals pick up the anxiety of the humans, and some of them have the capacity to convert that in some sort of way that the humans are calmed. However, very commonly the animals, whether they be dogs or cats or something of that nature, they generally suffer quite significantly from the anxiety that the humans are experiencing. I'm just wondering whether that any of those ideas resonates in terms of what you're experiencing with the horses and that type of environment, Veronica. I'm just intrigued by that, in terms of big animals.
Yes. So our big horses, they feel very content in the space where they are. So it is our mission to give them that space where they feel really safe, where they feel, they have a lot of space to move around. So it's very important that we have that structure. Otherwise, we couldn't work with all these varieties of, beside having people here with anxiety, we also have children here on the autism spectrum. And So it's very important that we create this safe haven for the animals. Otherwise, the animals will react in a way, mirror the emotions, and sometimes, also doesn't want to be in that space. And you say something very interesting, yeah. So it is my responsibility, just like, a therapist has this beautiful therapy room where he can welcome his patients. Yeah, I think you understand.
Very interesting.
Mm.
From the vet perspective, when I'm looking at a horse, usually a horse would react in a flight reaction.
Mm.
So when a human is approaching with a lot of anxiety, with a lot of stress, maybe too quickly, the horse will go into alert state. You will see it in the eyes, you will see it in the ears, you will see how the posture of the horse is, how the tail is. As a vet or a person who knows horses, you can tell now the horse is in an alert state and will react to whatever is coming from the human. And when anxiety is coming from the human, the horse will go off, usually. It won't attack. It's not an attacking animal. It's different in a dog. If you have a dog which you approach with a lot of anxiety, that dog might attack. Just to get himself into a safe state.
Mm.
Same with a cat. They are predators. They are not vegans. Vegans don't attack. Vegans go into flight. The same with a cow. A cow wouldn't attack. You need to do a lot to make a cow attack. But with the snake, I think, Priya, snake is the same. If you go with a lot of anxiety towards a snake might attack just to get itself into a safe state.
Mm.
But from itself, an animal is not prone to it. Animals are very peaceful. Maybe not centipeds. I'm not very sure about centipeds. They seem aggressive to me. But the normal animal we know, the normal animal is a peaceful, nice creature. Big or small. Elephants too, Priya, aren't they?
Sorry, what did I miss? I was a little
Oh, we
delayed.
were talking about if a human approaches animals, as Veronica is working with Healing for Horses, how is it when big animals are approached with a lot of anxiety?
Mhm.
And I think it's the same in small animals or big animals. If you approach them with anxiety, they will go into an alert state and then they will decide to attack or to go into flight. And a vegan animal is prone to go into flight and a predator is prone to attack.
Well, yes, because very simply put, when your body is filled with adrenaline or any other stress hormone, the smell of the body also changes, and they have incredibly sensitive sense of smell because that is the that they rely on in order to survive in the wild. So, if the horse has been domesticated only for the last 10,000 years, before that, horses were also wild. So, horses rely on their eyes, the eyesight, because as predators, they need to be able to see all around, and they have very big eyes for the size of their face, and very big brains as well, and very big ears which can move all the way around to the front and all the way to the back. So once you before you get onto a horse, the horse relies on what literally what chemicals you're throwing off, and they can definitely pick, because their sense of smell is very acute. They can pick any changes that are there in your body with because of the stress response that you're experiencing. But once you're riding the horse, then they pick up the tightness or the looseness of with the way in which you're sitting and the way in which you're holding the reins, because horses, when you cover their eyes in the front like this, they don't have any vision. They are relying completely on your judgment. And if a horse is able to clear a barricade or be able to steeple jump or jump across something, then they're relying entirely on your judgment in order for them to jump. And horses, as even the Lac Equine Proving shows, are the most um, sad, the most depressed, the most sad, the most oppressed, the most, I would say, abused animals in all of history, because horses had nothing to do with wars and battles, and yet, because human beings broke them literally, they were a huge part of our battles and wars and all that noise and all that bloodshed and all that chaos around them, but they still went because they were ridden by someone. So one of the big rubrics is head belongs to another, where we used to see only certain other remedies like alumina or lac ovis. Lac equinum is also an important remedy in that the head belongs to the other, because they rely completely on the inputs that the rider gives to them. But when you're approaching a horse with anxiety, that's the same thing that it picks up. It picks up your mood and where you're at, and they respond to that. As far as predators are concerned, you are the prey in that case. So, of course, they pick up. I was very interestingly, I was watching a YouTube channel called The Lion Whisperer. So it's
Mm-hmm.
this man called Kevin Richardson, and he has hand-reared lions and cats and hyenas right from when they were newborn. So they've imprinted on him, and when he approaches them, and he can call a hyena pudding, and he can scratch the chin or give them something to eat. But then he knows exactly what he's not supposed to do. Now that they're big animals and they're predators, he knows that he's not supposed to make sort of distress noises. Even when he's speaking, he cannot make distress noises because they pick up on that and they think that he's in distress.
Mm-hmm.
He also has to ally himself to the top dog, as it were, or the top cat, as it were. If it is a lion, then he has to ally himself with that, so that the others automatically, where there's a hierarchy in them, the others automatically they give him precedence and they think of him as the top dog. So he can be with a pack of hyenas. He knows what he has to do, his body language, what he should not do. He cannot enter their so-called territory just like that. He has to announce himself. He has to wait. He has to say, check their body language. So a lot of vigilance is called for on both sides. So as far as dogs are concerned, dogs like you to be the boss. So they offer their unconditional love and support to you if they sense that you're upset. The cat, house cat doesn't really care, but the house because the house cat chose to domesticate itself, and that is the thing that has come out even in the proving, that the cat chose to be with us around our granaries. There would be rats that would eat on the grain. So the cats knew that there is an unending supply of food here, and I can be somewhere inside by the fire a little bit. All I need to do is allow myself to be petted once in a while. So the cat made these sort of concessions to us. Whereas the dog, if there's hardly any connection between the wild, its ancestor, the lac lupinum or the wolf, and the present day dog. Also, it's been bred a lot, inbred or bred in such a way that the kind of the vulnerable, or let's say the kind of domesticated aspects come out more. So if you see, even in dog breeds, we like Dalmatians and Golden Shepherds much more than we would like a Rottweiler or the more so-called aggressive ones. So that's how the dogs, actually present day dogs, bear no kind of similarity with their ancestors, the wild wolf. And whereas cats bear quite a bit of similarity with the the lions, because in that they still retain their solitary nature quite a bit. Cat doesn't care. If you can go and travel, you just need to leave food and a litter box and they'll manage themselves. Marianne would be the best to tell us about cats. And
Some cats are different, but on the whole, the decision making of a cat being domesticated is very different to the decision making of a dog being domesticated or a horse. In a cat, it's a major decision. And you can really tell the day the cat decides. Hi, Gautam. Nice to have you here.
Hey, Gautam.
Hello, Gautam.
So Desmond Morris has a very nice series of books. There is a book called Cat Watching. There's a book called as People Watching. There's a book called as Horse Watching. He has a very nice series of books. So the things that I spoke about the horse are from Desmond Morris's book, and even about cats. So,
but we touched a very nice topic here. This is the body language. When I think of Kevin Richardson, he even made a lion swim to him.
Yes.
A cat deliberately going into water to swim with him. Extraordinary.
It's the trust, because he hand reared both of those cubs as infants. So he's their so-called mom. So or their leader, their alpha. So where he leads, they follow and they trust him. So they trust him enough to explore that aspect. And once they did it, then those two lions just began swimming. But the hyenas, of course, love to rub themselves in all the carcasses and all the dirty water so that none of the insect, ticks or anything land on them. And so that way they're relatively clean, hyenas, which you won't take.
Hyenas are something very different. Actually, I'm not a big hyena fan.
I think they're very misunderstood. That's what he's trying to say. There's a couple of episodes where he's trying to show that. And in fact, lions eat a lot more of hyena kills than hyenas scavenge lion leftovers. So that's a very interesting fact there. So hyena hunts are very successful, and lions can sometimes come in and push their way in and snatch that away. But so hyenas prefer much more fresh kill and are successful rather than eat actually lion leftovers.
Where did we go to?
I don't know.
Eating prey. So our topic today is general anxiety disorders. And I picked all the anxiety series for this year because I felt that anxiety is much more getting a topic than it was the last years. Even though Corona so-called passed, the anxiety did not. Do you have the same impression?
There's no doubt about it in my experience. It's dramatic. The escalation in anxiety that I'm seeing with patients, just skyrocketing, absolutely skyrocketing. And just before you all came on the call, I was actually speaking with Mariana, and one of the things I've noticed is the way in which the actual bodies, the tissues within the body of a human are beginning to have more and more of an expression of anxiety. So, we're talking about an organ or a tissue or something of that nature, and showing very, very strong anxiety symptoms outside of the whole of the body. So like we're not talking about the whole human. With a psychological disorder, what we're talking about is anxiety actually occurring all the way down to the level of a tissue and producing some extraordinarily unusual results, and I'm going to be very, very interested to hear from our homeopathic experts here, what you've both got to say about this, because it is a massive issue. So what I am specifically talking about, or noticing, is that a system such as the immune system is responding to an information disparity. So, like, the information that's coming in is weird and unusual. And one of the elements that's actually occurring there is that the immune system is imagining that it's detecting viruses, and quite a wide variety, a range of viruses. And as a result, the immune system is beginning to kick in with an immune response. But of course, the viruses aren't prevalent in the body of the human at all. And rather than that, what's happening is that there's a mistake around the messaging of the viruses. And what's leading to is this sort of anxiety response. So what I'm observing is, I know I'm going around in a bit of a circle here, but what I'm observing here is that the immune system as a system itself is increasingly becoming anxious. It actually is beginning to behave in the way of an anxiety disorder. So that would be an unusual element that we're talking about, but am I seeing increased levels of anxiety in people? All of the normal clinical stuff is just skyrocketing. And then there's these unusual elements of the nature that I'm talking about as well, on top of. So that would be my answer to your question there, Mariana.
Gautam, what would you say? We can't hear you. Your mic is muted.
I'll unmute myself. Hi, Neil. Last time we missed you. You were absconding. I don't know. You disappeared somewhere.
I'm sorry about
hello,
that.
Veronica. Hello, Priya. Hello, Marianne. Hello, all who are listening to. Many a times in homeopathy, we say that every person knows that in homeopathy we talk or we decide the simillimum on the basis of the mind. Now, in mind, what happens is that we have at the active mind and the subconscious mind. So most of the times, 90% of the times, the anxiety is more related to the subconscious features of the mind. These are the past experiences or the experiences, hearsay evidences or hearsay experiences also. Like during the COVID times, it was more of the hearsay evidence or hearsay experiences or the hearsay knowledge or the inputs which led to anxiety more than people actually suffering from the COVID disease. So whatever we hear, whatever we read on the media, whatever we experience on forward messages or telegram channels or other channels, that is what creeps or that is what seeps into our subconscious mind, and that is what forms a concept. Now the concept here is not actually a concept, that is a temporary phase just before the concept, like what we have a indisposition before a disease. So this would be a primary concept before the actual concept being formed. So this primary concept or the hidden concept or the latent concept, what we think about or what we are brooding on when our minds are not actively involved intellectually or constructively in something else, that is what forms a preconceived notion or the preconceived idea as to how we would be responding to a particular event or occurrence when it actually takes place. So that is where we see many people are always on the edge. So that is where the hyper anxiousness of arsenic or the restlessness of arsenic is visible. Now, most of the drugs in homeopathy, we have the relation with Dr. Priya, what was just telling, the animal kingdom and the anxiety and the restlessness. I need not dwell upon that more because many of the books have catered to that and many authors have catered to that. But what Neil would help us with, the anxiety felt with metals. Now, metals, when we say, so metals are normally seen to be non-responsive. But when we think about materia medica drugs like arsenic or murk So we know that the metal, like we have example, Kali, the group Kali, which has a predominant anxiety in its feature. And if you look at the periodic table of the potassium salt, so that is what we say that the Kali group has the interest is a potassium is being the intracellular salt. So it likes to remain within. And that is where the introversion of Kali group comes in. So the Kali people, they like to be at home. They have that anxiety, fear. Now, if you look into the relationship of remedies, Kali comes between Latramure and sepia. We always say that sepia is the chronic or the complementary drug of Latramure. But in many of the authors have mentioned that if you feel that Latramure is indicated and if sepia has to follow, then in between you give Kali and then give sepia. Or many times it is seen that when natrum is indicated and if it doesn't work, you first give a dose of Kali and then go back to natrum, it will work. So herein we have, for knowledge of Neil, we are talking about Kali group is a group of drugs which comes under the potassium salt, and natrum, we know it is natrum. So like natrum chloride is the common table salt. So herein maybe not now, maybe today, not today, maybe over the time, I'll just send you some material about the like what we have made as a periodic table and the positions of the sodium element, position of the potassium element, and what would you feel about the anxiety within that element when surrounded by other elements which they may be compatible to or not compatible to. So therein we would be using the expertise of Neil to understand it. And like what Brother Neil just said about the immunity system being anxious, I would also like to understand the anxiety of the virus with respects to the relation to the vaccine. So the virus itself is under threat. If you understand the cellular anxiety, so the virus itself is under threat and going through a lot of threat because it is a survival of the fittest. So virus also has its anxiety to survive the onslaught of the vaccine. And then when we come to Veronica, it is horse is a child. Like you like how you rear a child, every pet or every domesticated animal is a child. So you have had the wild horses, you have your tamed horses. How would they refer or how would they respond to anxiety is what you can help us. So we would know the extremes of arsenic. If we take arsenic as the closest drug to the horses, if we take it that way, then how would we understand the extremes of arsenic? And Dr. Priya, if we understand the vets, so what they say is that in present day, for rest of all who are not from India or not from Mumbai, we have seen many so-called elites having pets like the like the dogs which are not actually to be domesticated. So when we talk about there are breeds of dogs who are meant to be domesticated and who are not meant to be domesticated. So when you take up dogs which are not meant to be in the climate of Mumbai, which is a humid climate, so and then when you suddenly place them in this climate, like for I don't know what reasons, maybe it was just for a tourist or for a vote bank politics. A previous government of Maharashtra, in where we stay, has made a penguin park in a zoo. Now, we by nature we know penguins are a natural habitats of snow, and you bring them to a place where there is artificial snow around. You don't think that they will. We are doing justice to them. So there are so many things that we can relate to anxiety. Now, anxiety in that penguin over there, anxiety in a animal who is not meant to be in a particular climate and who has been forced into that existence. And then you tend to have an anxiety towards that pet. So maybe that particular government was having an anxiety if the penguins don't survive, the common man will raise a question or a query, or the opponent who is there sitting in the parliament will raise a question that why have you wasted the taxpayers' money? So the anxiety not only of the animal which was brought into this enclosure of artificially created snow, but the anxiety of the politician who took that decision. So there are so many factors, like when Mary said that we would discuss on anxiety, general anxiety disorders will be so many factors and so many causes which leads to anxiety. So these are self-inflicted causes also. Our anxiety, like if today I was late to reach, so that also is an anxiety pattern. But there was a tandem chronology of events which lead to it. Many a times it is not within our hands. The road traffic, the construction work going around. So even if we leave with that avenue, that anxiety also is a factor. Like, that is self-inflicted. Now, the commonest thing would be that I should have left maybe 1 hour before the time which I left. So,
Just let me say something, please.
Yes.
What I understand from what you are saying is that subconsciously, sometimes we get something is wrong, whether it's an animal who has that notion or a human who has that notion. And when you look around and you just have this feeling something doesn't fit, something is wrong, you link in other triggers and form concepts around anxiety, which are hard to treat. So going to the penguin in the Mumbai Zoo and the artificial snow, if he is born there, he doesn't know real snow.
Yes.
But seeing the artificial snow, he will somehow check something is wrong. And he will look around and try to find what is wrong. And maybe see somebody throw a banana and says, yes, that is what is wrong, throwing a banana. And so we make a lot of misconceptions, a lot of triggers which have absolutely no sense, way out of
that small triggers, they keep on accumulating, and then we go into that phase of chronic anxiety syndrome.
Yes, and this is what happens if somebody gets normal psychopharmaca and has no possibility to get aware about the triggers just add up and the anxiety gets more and more and more. I would like to hear Veronica's opinion on that. Please unmute your mic.
So I'm talking about my own self the last days, where I found myself beside me, where I found myself triggered, where I found myself not in a good place. And yesterday afternoon, and I'm very grateful that I remembered what to do. Simply, I went to the cliff and I went to the herd of horses and I started to groom them. And then my mind, there was nothing in my mind anymore. There was just that being in the moment with the animals, which was so beautiful. And it helped me again to bring myself in alignment. It can be so simple.
So this is therapy of anxiety, which of course we can make a lot of theories around anxiety. But when a client comes, first thing is, how do I get out of the anxiety? How can I get back to normal life? How can I get back to enjoy life? And there, I don't know, Neil, what your experience is, but my experience is going out to nature, having to do something in the garden, having to do something with cats and dogs, or even cooking. Simple things help a lot.
Mary, I would just like to add to that is that that is what we advise people, like whatever you said, gardening, cooking, going out. So that means you're switching off from your tendency to brood. So you're getting involved constructively. That is what rubric we normally have, better when occupied. So most of the times when we are intellectually involved in something constructive, we don't get these triggers of anxiety. So many times we have people who come with itching in the legs. Commonest symptom what Priya must have experienced. People have itching at night. Now you just cannot go and start treating them on the physical level. You have to explain the patient why it is itching at night. Because at night you're not constructively or intellectually busy. When you're working in your offices, when the ladies are working at home, they don't get that itching. When you are sitting, when you have nothing to do, they you start itching. You just cannot start with urticaria or croton take or gunpowder or graphitis. You have to actually look into these causes, that when the person is occupied intellectually, like what you said, gardening, cooking, you cannot cook on your spinal level. When you cook on your spinal level, that is not getting involved in it. See, when you cook the same thing, but because you want to get rid of your anxiety, you'll try to innovate that cooking what you are doing. Maybe you like to experiment with certain kind of spices, or certain kind of addition or not adding. So that is how you'll get involved with something constructive. And like when I missed out the point of, I covered metals. Similarly, plants having anxiety. So when you have anxiety, like we have uh, a, a fit of anger leading to the vomiting of a nursing infant. So the mother's anxiety is transferred to the child who is breastfeeding, and the child experiences vomiting. So the patient or the child is brought to the homeopath or to the physician, that whenever the child nurses on the breastfeeding, he vomits. But that is where you have to give the constitutional drug of the mother also. Because you have to understand the rage, the irritability, the hyper anxiety of the mother is being transferred to the infant in terms of breastfeeding. And that is where the child is having a vomiting after every breastfeeding. So the mother has to be positively involved during breastfeeding. You have to explain the mother here. Priya would help us because she's into the maternal needs and the treatment along with it. So we have to understand that the mother has to be told that while breastfeeding, you have to visualize the milk being digested, and visualize the milk being transferred into the proper ingredients, vitamins, minerals, calcium in the child. The milk feeding is being transferred to the strengthening of the bones of the child. That is how the whole system will work. Unless and until the mother is not made aware of it, the child will not stop his vomiting, even if you give sulfur or chamomile.
Or Arethusa. Won't stop. And what I get here, Gautam, is in the breastfeeding, it's the same with animals. If the mother is in a state where she is not coherent, where she is not in the here and now, the child will react. And it's the same with an owner and an animal. If the owner is not in a coherent state and approaches the animal will react.
I'd like
So
to
we go
ask a
back to
question.
the inner harmony of the human. Neil?
Sorry, I didn't mean to over talk you, but I'd like to ask both you, Gautam and Priya, about an element of what you're talking about there, Gautam, which is the information transferring from the mother to the breastfeeding child. This is the example that you're referring to. And there are a number of mechanisms. So like it could be just a psychic communication that's going on between the mother and the child, or it could be that there's something actually ending up chemically happening in the breast milk. So that would be the question I'd like to approach you. But I'd like to just extend the idea out a little bit further. And I did a lot of work with people with immunity, with allergies, so allergic reactions and that type of thing. And what I found, surprisingly, was that the consciousness would end up in the food itself, and that would then stimulate an anxiety response, which would be an allergy response. So we're talking now about, well, it's a kind of immune system thing that we were talking about there earlier. But the best example that I have, I live right on the edge of one of the largest wheat producing areas in the world. It's an enormous, wheat belt. And when they are processing the wheat, they spray it with Roundup to kill off the wheat plants, and in so doing, they force the ripening of the wheat kernels, and you get about 10% extra cropping. And so the farmers do this because they make 10% more money out of the work that they're doing. What I found was that the consciousness of the cruelty of the humans, because the act of actually torturing the plant to death, which is what they're doing, they're literally torturing the plant to death by use of the glyphosate, that consciousness stays in the proteins, the actual wheat proteins, particularly the gluten. So it for whatever reason, the gluten actually holds the consciousness of that cruelty, and it makes it all the way into the human body when they're eating some bread or whatever it is that they're eating, and we end up with this big problem going on. So my treatment work, my therapy work, is I work with almost like what you're talking about there, Gautam. I'm working with the origin of the anxiety. We're talking about anxiety in their body, which is an allergic response, and so on and so forth. So I'm just very interested in to hear what you both got to say about this. It's really intriguing where you're going with this.
Interesting.
Priya, you would like to add to it?
Yes.
Yeah, please.
Neil, you are right. Gluten intolerance is increasing. But the wheat itself has also changed. So when initially we used to eat triticum, the emmer wheat, and now I think we are eating with triticum, which is a different wheat. So I think the species of the wheat has also changed. But it's also true that the gluten bonds much more with the organophosphate in Roundup, which causes then more, the gluten intolerance kind of picture to come up in our patients. Now, having said that, not everybody that eats that gluten develops that. So I think it also needs something within you. You have to be perhaps somebody needing a monocot remedy where gluten is, where wheat is there in the Poales, which is the grass family. So you need to have some sort of genetic makeup, like a constitution that, shall we say, has already got some sort of a groove or a fault or something that then doesn't react very well to the new gluten that is there and then produces that kind of symptom, then I would then look directly at the poilus themselves, because in the monocot remedies, you have all of them are grasses that, human beings, when we became settlers, we discovered accidentally that, rice and wheat, they all come entirely in that nutrition line of the monocots, which is the column 4. And then all of them are there. Bamboo is there, corn is there, Zea maïs is there. Then you have rice, Oryza sativa, you have Triticum dioicum, you have Saccharum officinarum, you have Saccharum album. All of them are in that column 4 Poales, which is all the grass family. So then you're looking at either triticum as a remedy or Oryza as a remedy for that specific thing where they're having these symptoms, or you need to look at Bambusa or Zea or Saccharum itself, Saccharum officinarum, if it is a child that has this kind of skin eruptions because of, something that is happening. So you need to look at that line completely. Not all of them who would eat, not every individual who would eat this gluten would develop that gluten intolerance, or that gene for that gluten intolerance would get activated, because we've all been eating right from childhood. I believe that most of these things, if it had to be a true gluten intolerance, would have come up the very first time that we as infants in India, you have a feeding ceremony at 1.5 years where, or at 9, 10 months or a year, wherein they feed you your first solid food. It is usually rice and a little lentils, or it can eventually then go on slowly to wheat and maybe flatbreads or something along with what we eat. So that very first intake would then produce that symptoms. If it hasn't, and if it's something new, then we need to look at that entire group of remedies, I think. So, but it's also true that it is increasing. And the way that we're cultivating the grasses have taken over at the cost of forest, grasslands have taken over, and humans are responsible for that. So there is a big destructive element also in that entire line of grasses. And you have even grasses remedies like Lolium temulentum, which we are using now for Parkinson's. So the nervous system is affected, uh, gastrointestinal system is affected, children are affected. Bambusa is for menopausal women with back complaints. You have the spine affected. So it's a very interesting group of remedies. We need to look at all of them if we are to understand the intolerance to food or something that comes from outside that is supposed to nourish us, but it doesn't. So the grass family has all of them. We need to look at all of them.
Priya, I have a question.
Hmm.
We have a lot more food intolerance and allergies in dogs now than we had before. The major mistake in the past years was feeding dogs the grasses, the
Hmm.
grains. So when you look at Lac caninum and the grasses, what is it that they have in common?
Lac caninum and the grasses don't have very much in common, except perhaps for the natrum element, which is the where the grasses are. They belong to the nutrition line. So it's about unconditional food that is supposed to be given from the mother to the child. So you have even tea in it. In the dicots, you have even the thialis, which has the tea and hypericum in the womb stage itself. And then you
Mhm,
have everything else up to the end, including pumpkins. Pumpkins are at the
mhm,
end in violalis. And here up in the monocots, you have all of them.
mhm,
So perhaps the only thing common between what dogs are eating is dogs are like toddlers. So, they're infants and toddlers. They, first of all, I think the habit, certain households have a habit wherein dogs don't beg at the table. They are given their food, it's separate. You can't beg for scraps at when, the family is eating, because then you tend to eat those things that actually make you ill, like salt and sugar and
mhm,
chocolate and a lot of the spices. They're supposed to eat more raw. They're supposed to get more exercise. Like I went with a friend to her vet, and the dogs that I saw there are grossly overweight. And there's also the question of selective breeding, not inbreeding. Selective breeding, that's also puppy mills which are on the rise. Then this combination of no exercise and fatty food and just giving them whatever they ask for and treating them like human children, which they're not.
mhm.
And lack of exercise, I suppose. So these are the combinations. The trio, I would not blame just the food. So,
No, and I just was interested in the symptoms of the remedies in the
hmm,
provings.
hmm, hmm.
Is there anything where it links in the grasses and Lac caninum? Something
No,
they have in common?
no,
No.
there isn't anything. Only the natrum line, because the lac caninum, the medicine itself is made from the milk of female
I
dog.
know, I know.
So that's possibly the only connection. The nourishment aspect of it is the only connection with grasses.
Mhm,
Um, so I would put it more as a combination of lack of exercise, eating undog foods, I mean, foods which are not suitable for dogs, and more of the bad genes that come up when we're looking for certain external characteristics. We are probably breeding more bad genes out. So they have the short noses and all the respiratory issues, then they have the hip issues, then they have the overweight issues and all of that. Then all of that is much more because of what we are doing to them rather than, what they themselves are getting.
That is what answers these questions also, Priya. With
Hmm.
human beings, lack of exercise,
Yes.
wrong food habits, and like what we have discussed in previous episode, preservatives are being used more in food items now. So the quality of food, what Priya said, that many a times patients they come and tell that, how can you tell us to stop eating wheat? We have been
Hmm.
eating wheat since generations. But the quality of food quality of fertilizers used to grow plants now, to grow our feed now, is very bad and very too many chemicals rather than organic farming. So,
Yes.
Neil, that answers your question that the allergies, what we are talking about, is actually due to these reasons. Primary reasons is that actually still now in the villages or the rural areas of India, our country, people still use their feet to walk around, which is not seen in our urban cities. So walking around is itself an exercise in itself. Here people walk on their treadmills rather than actually walking in nature. So lack of Vitamin D deficiency, therefore, is common. And vitamin D deficiency has directly been linked to majority of diseases, not only of the respiratory tract, but also GIT and musculoskeletal system and the CNS. So everywhere we have seen in our cities that majority of the women, especially postmenopausal, but not only that, in children now also, vitamin D deficiencies have been common. Because children also nowadays, they go to the artificial turfs created in the malls and the shopping complexes to play rather than actually play on the playground. So there are so many factors which are linked to why we are feeling that gluten, or why do we feel that allergies are now rampant now. But if we go down to the roots, we will know like what was mentioned in the Gellert's poem, before Odyssey appear. The truth we mortals seek, us blessed to make and keep. The all-wise slightly covered over, but did not bury deep. The first edition of Organon, Dr. Hahnemann's Organon, mentions these 4 lines. This is a Gellert's poem. So whatever we seek for cure is around us, but it has just been covered by sand, and we have to just go around and look around for it. So if we feel that rural populations are healthy and urban is not, we have to look into what we have left, our acts of omission, which has led to us to this state of unwell-being. So if you look into the relationships, what Priya said, that the lineage, the genetics. So herein we have seen that Neil, people who have gluten allergies may not have gluten allergies in their ancestors, but therein they may have asthma, bronchitis or bronchiectasis, respiratory diseases which have been treated by steroids. And these next generations have come up with gluten allergies, or people with COX, tuberculosis, and then the next generations have come with gluten allergies. So these are common factors seen. That is how the importance of the past family history is taken into consideration. And if we take that into the homeopathic concept, the miasmatic evolution of a disease, that is how it comes into play. So people may say, the common man may say that gluten, we have been eating, I'm a North Indian by birth. So in North, wheat is the commonest uh, staple diet. But therein people walk for miles, walk around. People are exposed to sunlight in their farms and their fields. Here in city, we are not exposed to sunlight. We are not used to walking around, except maybe inside the house, because everybody is in their vehicles. So therefore, there is no exercises. There are no exercises. There is no healthy life. The air we breathe is more dangerous than COVID virus, because we have all the possible pollutants emitted from the vehicles around us. So, so many other factors. We cannot tell that previously we used to do something and why not now. But previously we used to stay in a more healthier environment rather than what we are doing now. Yes, Veronica, please.
While Neil were talking about the wheat production, I remember the milk production. And those cows maybe don't see the sunlight who produce this milk. And how do I feel drinking from a Tetra Pak milk, and how do I feel drinking from my goat, which is outside in the yard? How do I feel from a home cooked meal, and how do I feel, eating out? It has so much to do also with these. Food is energy. It's it's carrying energy. And if we take that in, yeah, if we start with milk production, we can talk about meat production, you know. So this is anxiety. Yeah.
I'm just very interested in oh, sorry. Yeah, you finished. Okay. So I'm just very interested whether there is sort of a recognition of the anxiety actually being in the food. So, you know, is there a recognition of that? So in other words, the food itself is expressing the consciousness of anxiety. And which was, you know, kind of where my question began there around the breastfeeding mother. Is it actually the milk, or is it the consciousness of the mother? And that was sort of an important part of this, isn't it? Like what we're looking at here.
I think the quality of the milk would depend on, what hormones are there in the blood, right? So if in a breastfeeding mother, if there's already an adrenaline response and, for instance, there is an unreadiness to become a mother, or, a very tiring pregnancy and childbirth, then those leftover hormones would definitely be there in the milk. So
Okay.
it's, after all, a normal secretion. So
Yeah.
it's a normal exocrine secretion. So it's modified sweat gland. So if and the sweat glands, they are the ones who eliminate the toxins. So then it then stands to reason that if there is stress leading to accumulated toxins, then those toxins would be eliminated not just in the urine, in the sweat, but also in the milk of the breastfeeding, lactating mother. So, which is where I differ a little bit with Gautam, in that I'm 100% sure that if I were to tell a stressed out and exhausted mother to think of all the things that she's nourishing while feeding and being conscious, she's going to give me a tight slap. She's she's going to want she's going to want me to take care of her exhaustion, take care of the circumstances surrounding the birth, take care of the tiredness. Maybe there's a episiotomy, maybe there's anemia, maybe there are a lot of other things that are affecting her mental state as of now. So I would like to take care of those things and let her produce good quality milk, which is stress free, and then not worry about, what to tell her about what she should be thinking when she's feeding. So it's a, healthy breastfeeding is supposed to be a meditative response, a moment. It is supposed to be the other benefits of being, for an infant to be breastfed, just to be held close, to smell the mother, to to feel safe in her arms, to know that unconditionally milk will be given whenever the infant needs. I think so. Of course, the smell or the body language of the mother would change if she was stressed. And then we also know that there is a first part and a last part of the milk, right? The first part is a thirst quenching part, and the middle part is the actual meal, and then the last part is where the fat rich part comes, and you get. So if it's going to affect, stress is going to affect the composition of the milk. Maybe milk is more watery. Maybe an undernourished mother produces less fat in her milk. It has it's the only, I think it's the only milk that contains iron. So if she's anemic, then she's going to get more anemic if she breastfeeds. So maybe production will be less. So I think we need to address those factors before we address other factors. And definitely there would be a difference. From personal experience, I know that for the first child, I was very unready to feed. And so I had a lot of issues. For my second son, I was very ready to, and I had done my research and I was in a better frame of mind. So then it definitely affected outcomes. So as somebody who's educated, if this has been my two different experiences, can you imagine somebody who's a non-medical person? It's a very sensitive time. They need a lot of support and mm, comfort and taking care and nutritious food and um, all of that. And Indian women, most of them are anemic. My hemoglobin hovers around 9.5, where it should be 12. And Indian males, the hemoglobin is very good. Malnourishment is an endemic factor in India. In a family of, for instance, I spent 15 days with Dr. Balvinder Singh at his clinic in Amritsar 2 years ago, and it was an eye-opener. In the same family who is well-to-do, there can be a girl child and a boy, the child, the son and the daughter who come. The daughter is often malnourished. It is something which is inbuilt in their psyche that makes them offer less nourishing food or less food to the girl child. So boys often get away with being obese, but girls cannot. They're often malnourished. So it's kind of endemic. It's kind of built into the system. So we need to deal with anemia as a very big silent disease. And then we can build on healthy pregnancies and then build on, I think, healthy lactations and, the aftermath.
Well, that's remarkably helpful to hear you speaking about that, Priya. It really is very, very helpful.
What I can say is that the way an animal is killed is definitely influencing the quality of the meat. There are a lot of studies in veterinary science about that.
Mm. I guess there's two elements to it, and I absolutely, treasure what you're saying there, Priya, around the, the hormonal differences and, the actual physical chemistry of what's in the food. And, these matters that you're just touching upon there towards the end about the girls not being nourished as much as the boys and that type of thing, like the psychological element of what all of that means, the self-worth of the girls compared to the boys, those sort of psychological issues to me, like it's an eye-opener to actually hear you talking about it. It's extraordinary. So from where I come from, I would be looking at what's happening from a vibrational frequency or consciousness level with all of that experience and how that then actually applies in. And going back to what you were talking about there with the grasses generally and the wheat in particular, there's no recognizable connection between modern wheat and what there was 200-300 years ago. It's not at all. I remember seeing that there was less than 4% protein in the original wheat grains, and now we're trying to get 15-16% protein in the wheat, and it just creates havoc. It absolutely creates havoc. Makes very nice bread, but it creates havoc.
So much so that they had to do a separate proving of the ancient wheat, the mother wheat. And it has to do, and the themes that came up in that proving were about being uprooted from your motherland and being transplanted somewhere else, and where you experience a deep lack of connection with your own roots. So it's very interesting that then the themes between the current wheat and the old wheat, the emmer wheat, the themes are very different. So, which also tells you what you're saying, Neil, that the current wheat bears hardly any resemblance to the ancient mother wheat that used to eat, which was very less processed. Because right now, wheat is highly processed, and we do separate the chaff, we do remove the outer coating, and we deal only with the inner part of the wheat, and it's milled in the industrial kind of space, whereas it is supposed to be milled in a kind of a in between stones, and that kind of milling is what is supposed to do. So it changes the composition also in a particular way. So a lot of us have gone back to eating organic, and we also have more cold pressed oils, and because rather than the highly processed even oils.
Yeah.
And there is a whole movement called as Sharan, wherein they talk about whole food plant-based, where they don't even have separate oil from outside, because oil is essentially supposed to be along with the fiber. Like if you eat a whole almond, their idea is that it is more nutritious than if you have almond oil, because the processing time changes if you have it as a whole food. Whereas like a whole avocado is far more nutritious than having avocado oil. And heat also destroys quite a bit, it modifies the proteins. So they prefer cooking without oil and adding toasted sesame seeds and eating whole groundnuts and having more raw foods which are organic, versus and no milk, and having more nut milks and the nut cheeses than milk cheese itself. So that movement is also picking up. And one of the most important big group of diseases that they're dealing with is diabetes and its related obesity. So they diabetics are able to go off their medicines when they follow whole food plant-based diet. So and they have big programs where in 21 days they're getting them off their medicines or reducing their medicines drastically, giving them more energy, being able to be more energetic. They're able to walk more, and like Gautam said, not on a treadmill but outside, and other sources of iron, not just milk. We have a big preconceived notion in India that milk is essential. So we're trying to break that barrier, that maybe yogurt is necessary, but not really milk per se. Because even milk is now completely industrialized in India, milk production.
Well, it
It's
certainly is here.
interesting where we did go here, starting
Yes.
from anxiety, ending up with food. And Neil, maybe you can make the bridge between food and anxiety.
Well, look, that's exactly where I'm going, and that's why I've been asking these questions. Is in my opinion, is that
Gautam
the
wants to say something.
sorry,
No,
Gautam, yeah.
And
Mary,
Gautam wants to say something.
Mary, I have mailed you and also put on the Telegram channel. Priya, you are aware there's a book, Cochleneberg. So in that, each rubric has been, each drug from the homeopathic Materia Medica has been differentiated with regards to how can you differentiate the different drugs with regards to anxiety. So the anxiety rubric, I have taken a scan and I have emailed you, Mary, and also put up on the Telegram channel. So if that can be put up, maybe later on also, maybe now, or maybe later on, everybody can go through that, and maybe over the next series of lectures, we can discuss if you have to discuss on that. Because Neil and Veronica, if you go through that, our great master, Dr. Hahnemann, he has actually differentiated how would each person respond to the same symptom of anxiety. So I have already put it on the Telegram channel. Just go through that.
Gautam, if you can
Thank you.
email me, that would be great. I'll send you my email ID.
I'll kindly do that. I'll email you.
Yeah. I'm just
I
putting it
I
in the
think
chat.
you are in the Telegram channel of Speakers Chat of.
No, I've
But I'll email you.
changed phones, so I'm not on.
Please do that.
Yeah, I've emailed you. I've messaged you my email ID.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Neil.
Yeah, so no, all I'm saying is that what I'm observing is with this explosion of the psychological, like the grand scale of anxiety. What I'm observing are the subtle elements of the anxiety in the body, and both Priya and Gautam, you both explained much about the approach that you're taking to those matters. But I think that there's a lot more in there. There's a lot more in the whole process around the way in which a cell can actually perform or will perform against different stress. So if we're looking at a stress response and anxiety being one of these stress responses, then I think there's a lot of room that we can explore in all of that territory. So anyway, look, I'm very grateful for everybody's input here today. It's been fabulous. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you. So what we had was animals and humans, humans and humans, mothers and children, humans and food, animals and food, and the different kinds of anxiety that are there, and how we end up in accumulating triggers and triggers and triggers till the point where we don't know anymore where the anxiety came from originally. So going back, trying to find something to heal, trying to go for therapy. Of course, we have the homeopathic therapy. Of course, we have animal therapy. We have to go back to nature, have to go back to a very simple organic food, very, very simple. And what I would like to add in is try to get out of the confusion. Because one of the things that triggers anxiety is much too much information coming from every side. Energetic information, intellectual, emotional, body language, whatever. It's a heap of information coming in all the time. We don't have to think of social media, it's enough from all the other channels. And most of the time, the information that's coming in is contradictory. And still, we have to process it and come to a point to be able to make a decision and act. And this is what I see in anxiety clients, a lot of problem to make a decision and act.
I just want to add one thing that if since we are working on the chakras and the connection with uh, how we are uh, dealing with anxiety or other psychiatric illnesses, the most important chakra that has to do with anxiety is chakra 1, because that is to do with your life, your fight or flight, uh, whether you're earthed enough, whether you're able to deal with the stresses of life. That is the main, most important chakra that is affected. And perhaps then it goes on to affect chakra 2 and 3. And your inability to act is chakra 3. And then, perhaps the response wherein you're eating too much or eating too little or stress eating or having these eating disorders is chakra 2. And the constant fight or flight, and what should I do? This kind of thing is chakra 1. So, you know, these are the most important, because everything that we've talked of today would fit into these three. So it would, we have spoken about mother and child relationship, which is 2. We've spoken about an inability to act and confusion, which is chakra 3. And then, eating disorders or food not satisfying the senses, which is oral, which is chakra 2. And then the first part when I walked in, where animals sense our body language and we sense, and it activates a fight or flight. And anxiety often involves a fight or flight response, and either fear for the future or fear for the present, your life, is chakra 1. So these are the 3 main
Even
involved.
all the incoming information which can't be processed would be chakra 2 and linked to the parasympathetic system.
Yeah. And if it led to depression and a lot of sleeping, then that would be 1 again. If it led to too much anxiety and, fight or flight and being unable to sleep and going into bipolar highs, that would be chakra 6. So, it's
Combined.
It's all combined. Yeah.
Combined and same kind of disbalance affecting the system. So, for our last minutes, any kind of recommendation for therapy?
Well, I'll start. I'd like to
What would you
pick up on.
recommend to somebody who has general anxiety and says, how can I help myself?
I'll start. I'd like to reinforce what Veronica was talking about right at the beginning, and it's to be in nature and to connect. And you're talking about the chakra one and earthing and that sort of thing there, Priya. To me, that is the ultimate way of approaching, the entry points into anxiety. So particularly where you're not necessarily in the most anxious state, like the fully expressed, but as you're entering into it, to be able to connect to nature in this kind of way, as Veronica was talking about, is priceless. It's absolutely priceless. So that would be my 2 cents worth. Follow Veronica.
Yeah, if your state charge that is there in your state has been taken care of with being outdoors and being with animals and receiving therapy from them, and if your state comes back to equilibrium, then that's great. But if that's still not possible, and you find that either the acuteness of your anxiety is increasing, or you find that that only helps temporarily, and then when you come back, you get anxious again, then definitely go to a homeopath. They're going to give you something for your anxiety. You can take your dose, and then you can go and be outside with your animals. The case taking aspect, which provides a lot of ventilation, wherein you're able to tell them, this is what I'm feeling, and this is my experience, and it's as if there is no air, or I'm squeezed, or it is activated my fight or flight response. And when you feel heard and validated, and then you receive your remedy, I think then you're more receptive to to eating good food, and letting it nourish you, and seeking good exercise, and being outdoors, and being with your animals. This is what I would add.
Love it.
Yeah.
Adding on to what Priya said, medicines, they help maximum 40 or 50%. The rest of the things that matter is the diet and mode of living. The diet and regimen, as what has been stressed upon by all of us. And to add on to it, you have to ask the patient to develop a passion for either music or gardening, or just go around with, if there's an animal farm around, just go and clean them, bathe the animals around you. So that itself will, that will make any human being happy, because by nature, human beings, they also love to be in water. That is what relaxes or soothes all of us. A warm shower always soothes us. So when we tend to animals, see, it is not practically feasible for everybody to have pets in a city, because if you're working and if you are involved with our works, it is just, you tend to, by the end of the day, you tend to feel guilty when we look into the eyes of our pets when we come to back to our houses. So that itself causes a guilt on us. And with the animals not being well, it is practically very difficult for a urban living person or a working person to tend to that sick animal back at home. So efficiency is not met even when the person is at work, because emotions are attached to the animal who cannot speak and who is suffering. So develop a passion. Music helps. Learning music definitely helps more than listening to music. So develop a passion, do gardening, cultivate a habit, be selfish for 2 hours in 24 hours. Being selfish also is a boon or is a blessing nowadays, because we tend to overstretch ourselves by catering to needs of our family and the society. So we have to be selfish if we want to give our 100% to all those who matter to us.
Yeah. Creating a very simple, lovely routine, which can start with getting up and making myself some tea, and then maybe walking out in the garden and watering the plants, and really assuring that I eat very simple. Today we are going to the rainforest, and there is this 84 young woman, and she invited us for lunch, and she said, what would you like to eat? And I mentioned to her, I would love to eat what you have in your garden. I would love to eat what you have in your surroundings. And I know she has the art of making something out of it. This is, the grandmother style, right?
Mhm.
They always made something, what they had in the garden with a little, and they made it so tasty.
Right. Maybe something we did not mention yet is that a lot of anxiety is based on unseen, unrecognized, or just put away sorrow. And if we look deeper and look beyond anxiety, we will see a lot of sorrow and sadness, which people don't like to confront. So, Priya, you need to go. See you next time. Thank you very much for being here.
Next time. Bye, everyone. See you. Take
Priya, just check you got the mail or not.
Yeah, let me just.
I've already forwarded it.
Yes, I've received it. Thank you so much. Bye. See you. Have a great weekend, everyone. Bye, Neil. Bye,
Bye-bye.
Veronica.
Yeah.
Bye, Marianne.
Bye bye,
Bye,
everybody.
Gagan.
I actually have to run as well, Marianne. So
Yes,
lovely to see
the
you all.
talk is finished anyway. We did cover a lot of topics. See you next time. Thank you very much for attending.
Neil, be regular this year.
Hmm?
I said, Neil, be regular this year. Don't bunk classes.
Very good, Gautam. I'll attend to that. Thank you.
See, I'm getting inspired by you now.
Ah,
I can see that. Yes, I can see that. Very good. Thank you all. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.
thank you all. Bye bye, everybody, and have a nice Sunday. Bye bye.
Full month.
Bye bye.
We will see you in a month.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.